welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Keeson. With me today is the woman who knows how to set personal boundaries, Alex Standy. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. And Alex, we were talking just before we got started that you're on the mend, you're improving, which I love hearing. I know listeners are going to love hearing that too, because you've been through all kinds of craziness. But this is like a few weeks in a row, you're getting better and better.
Yeah, well, that's how it's supposed to go. So yeah.
Well, it is, yeah. But the point is, it's happening. That's the good news. Yeah. So that's wonderful. Yeah. Well, we got people to celebrate with today because Marini Young, who does the Monday shows with me, is joining us as a special guest today because she's friends with our special guest today. So we have a special guest bringing a special guest. This is like a special guest echo chamber going on here. But Marie, first of all, hello. Haven't seen you in a few days.
It's been a while, Walt. How are you?
Yeah, right. And thank you for joining us on Thursday. Our guest, Lisa Marini, is your friend. And I always like to turn over to the person who brings the person in to kind of introduce them. So tell us about Lisa. Tell us about your connection and so forth.
Well, I met Lisa just as lockdown started. And she did hypnotherapy back then. And she's the lady who hypnotized me for not eating sugar. And that was amazing. And then she does all this other wonderful stuff. She does this brain health course, which I took, sort of explaining the brain and how it works and how to look after yourself. And now she's gone and written a book on relationships. So, and she's literally just like a ray of sunshine. So she's perfect for the show. As soon as I saw that she'd done that book, I was like, get on the show. And I'm really pleased to see your gorgeous face.
Yeah. So Lisa Marini, thank you for joining us. How you doing?
I'm wonderful. Thank you guys so much for having me today.
Very glad to have you. And as Anne-Marie alluded to, your book, The Couple's Playbook, was just released. I mean, it just came out.
Yes, just released.
That's exciting.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm super excited. It's been a wild ride. A lot of fun.
It always is, right? I mean, anytime that you write a book, that's just part of the process. But tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about the book. Tell us how you got into all this.
Oh my gosh. How much time do we have?
Oh, we got an hour, but take what you need.
I know. I can talk for hours. Gosh, I can rewind for a little bit here and kind of tell you what I did in my previous career and what brought me into what I do now. But so what I did was construction, believe it or not. I was a superintendent for a multifamily general contractor, and we built really large construction projects, and I ran them. And as you can imagine, it's an incredibly stressful job, especially as a woman in the industry, because that's not really heard of. And stress really was getting the best of me. I don't know if you guys have ever had stress. Who doesn't have stress, right? And I started to notice all sorts of things happening to me physically with stress. My hair was falling out. My memory was going. I was irritable, moody. I mean, you can name it. Everything happened. And chronic migraines, just the whole slew of fun stuff that came with stress. And I was pretty tough, thought I could out muscle stress. I could arm wrestle it and win, which I don't know about you. If you've tried that, it doesn't work. Zero.
I have the gray hair to prove it.
Yes, I recommend. And I actually was at a conference and I saw a neuroscientist put an image of the brain up on the screen and show us what happens to the brain under stressful conditions. And I had this huge aha moment that, oh my gosh, I can't out tough stress. It's a biological thing. So I started to get interested in stress, studying stress, really with the intention of healing my own issues, my own physical ailments. And the more that I learned about it, the more I realized it's at the source of everything. Believe it or not, our brain's at the source of everything. I think it's such an obvious thing when I say it, right? But every decision I made, every goal I didn't achieve or did achieve, the way I behaved in relationship, the way I behaved with my kids, my brain was at the source of everything. And so I became a bit of a junkie and started studying the brain. As Anne-Marie said, I've, become a hypnotherapist. I could do brain classes. I do one-on-one coaching, all really just to help people have the user's manual for the organ that controls everything. And the more that I talked about it, the more people were excited to learn more about it. I started getting clients, and it really was hard to balance a full-time career and a full-time client load. And so I took the leap and I started my own private practice and haven't looked back since.
Wow.
That's fabulous. Yeah, that's really, really good. I was having a conversation with my barber today. I was getting my hair cut. And one of the things I mentioned to him is that people who are therapists and life coaches and so forth usually go into the field because they themselves needed to understand. They needed to figure stuff out. He said, really? He couldn't believe it.
Yes, it's so true. That's exactly how it has to be. You have to teach from the place that you need the most help in.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why it always happens. And I think it actually makes sense because when you go in with the desire to learn, to absorb information, and then hopefully to be able to apply it to not only your own benefit, but the benefit of others, when you have that kind of desire, you're going to absorb it well. Yeah. You're going to pick it up. And I mean, the way you described it just now, you saw the brain scan at that conference and, it was just like right in. You had to go learn all about that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you learn it and then you have all this information. You got to do something with it. So share it and teach other people.
Which is wonderful. That's great. Now, Anne-Marie, how did it work out with the hypnotherapy session?
Oh, that was amazing. I didn't eat sugar for like 18 months and then I got COVID and all I wanted was sugar. Thanks, COVID.
You have to come back. We'll fix you up again.
I absolutely would love that. But it was so good because I couldn't eat anything with sugar in it, even like bread. If it had sugar in it, it was like eating a cake. It was brilliant, and I felt so much better. At first, you feel really groggy because you're coming off of it, but my goodness, the energy and everything afterwards was so beneficial. So yeah, Lisa, I'm coming back.
Yes, please do. I'm always here. When we did it remote, which is awesome. A lot of people think it doesn't work remotely, and remote is just as powerful as in person. So
no.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because obviously you're the other side of the Atlantic, so
I know,
and it still worked.
Alex, have you ever gone through a hypnotherapy session?
Okay, so yes, but no. So one time, so senior week in high school, we had a hypnotist come to entertain us, and I did end up being one of the people that were hypnotized. From what I heard, it was fun. I don't remember the other.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that funny? Because I remember everything when Lisa did it, and she didn't make me cluck like a chicken or anything like that. She was special.
I think it's when you're doing stuff you don't want to remember, that part of your brain kind of blocks it out. So it's like, I probably was clucking like a chicken for all I know.
It's much like my brain on a night after a night out. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Well, if you want to try the real deal, let me know because it's an incredibly powerful, fun tool.
So what things do you hypnotize for? Like what?
Really anything. I mean, hypnosis is just shifting subconscious patterns. So any pattern or habit that you have that you want to change or that you want to have that you don't have right now, a certain motivation, it's those types of things or patterns that you don't want to have. So it really does work for anything. Okay.
I'm going to keep that in mind. I got to figure out what I need or don't need.
Yeah. We can always figure it out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that conscious creator types are always interested in is removing blocks to whatever it is they're trying to attract into their lives.
Period.
How does hypnotherapy work in that regard?
Well, so a lot of times we don't understand what our block is because for us to consciously know what the block is, we have to come from the conscious mindset, which is only about 5 or 10% of our mind is the conscious mind. So we could go and analyze and think we have it figured out, but really subconsciously is where the answers are. So we can do all sorts of different things in a subconscious state, right? It's just a different brainwave pattern and we let the brain tell us. So we don't have to even know what it is. We let the brain show up, let us know what the block is, and it can be reassociated. It can change in the subconscious mind.
Is it something that happens usually in one session? Does it take multiple sessions? How does that work?
And Marie, did we do one session?
We just did the one.
Yeah.
And it was, we booked, I think we booked 3.
Yeah.
And it worked perfectly in the one. So that's why I went on and did the brain health, because
yeah,
it was just good.
And that's pretty typical. I mean, depending on what the pattern is, I worked with a politician that would sweat a lot when he would go into debates. And, that's not a good look when you're up in sweating. So we did hypnosis for that one session. Sweating was gone, but then he wanted to work on that. He actually was up there and his body got really hot. So we worked on that. And so sometimes there's layers to it or different things that you want to work on after the main presenting issue. But yeah, typically it's in one session. Is pretty powerful. Yeah,
it sounds like you make a breakthrough. You say, well, geez, if it worked there, maybe it should work over here too.
That's what we do. And I'll tell you at COVID, it was a trip because I had a lady come in and she was just blown away. And so she sent her husband in, and then pretty much the entire block, in their neighborhood, they were all coming.
Wow.
So-and-so who knows so-and-so. So as they were social distancing, they were talking about hypnosis. And I pretty much saw the whole neighborhood. It was great.
Have you been invited to the next neighborhood block party? I'm just kind of
curious. I should be. That would be fun.
Yeah. Of course, it'd have to be virtual in order to make it, true. Well, that's another thing. Anyway, so hypnotherapy is one thing that you've been doing now. As Anne-Marie mentioned, and as you were talking about, you have a book out, The Couples Playbook. Talk about how that came about and what you're doing with that.
Yes, absolutely. And it's so different than hypnosis. Hypnosis is just one small piece of the many, many things that I do. So one of the things that I love to do is work one-on-one with people. And what I found through the years is I would have, let's say, a woman as a client, and she would talk about the difficulties she'd have in relationship, hard times in communication, or her husband wouldn't understand her. And so I'd give her some really great tools, all from a brain-based perspective. So that's where what I do is very distinct than regular coaching or therapy, is because I kind of do the precursor to better communication, better listening. Everything comes from your brain, like I said. And if you're triggered, if you're upset, you're pissed off, you're whatever, not feeling really great in the situation, your brain is perceiving danger and it moves into a different brain state. And when we're in this different brain state, we're protective, we're reactive, we're shut down. And so having really great solutions do not happen in this brain state. We are unable to typically listen well. We lack empathy, we lack compassion, and we show up very protective, right? We shut down, we don't listen, we don't want to cooperate. And we could give a couple or a client as many tools as we want. But when we're in this brain state, we can't access those tools. And so to get those great listening communication skills don't happen when we're in a defensive fight and flight brain response. Mm-hmm. So the book really helps couples understand their brain state, how to help each other navigate brain states. So if I'm shut down and defensive, my partner now has some tools to help my brain calm down, feel safe again, move into the other brain state, which allows me to access good listening, good communication, problem solving skills. So it really starts from the brain. And I also used the theme of sports because I found that, a lot of gentlemen don't really want to do the touchy feely work of relationships and, or the self-help stuff. And so the sports analogy has been really fun for a lot of my guy clients that understand, hey, if one person on the team fails, the whole team fails, just like in relationships. So the subtitle of the book is Relationships Are a Team Sport, Set Yours Up to Win.
Got it. Okay.
Like it.
Yeah. So I'm gathering then that what you're teaching couples, really you're teaching them about themselves and their own mental processes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And their nervous systems and their brain state. So, it's easy, I think, to be in a relationship and think, oh, I'm too sensitive, or I'm so quick to be triggered. What's wrong with me? I need to fix myself. I need to go to therapy. And yeah, we need to work on our past stuff, but it's simply I just need to shift my brain state. And when we realize that it's actually that simple, that I just need to downregulate that trigger response, shift my nervous system so that I can be in a better mindset, then there's keys to the kingdom. So, the book is broken up in two parts. The first part of the book is really creating some great structure, having team meetings. Why are you even in this relationship? Really getting committed to the purpose of your relationship. And the second part of the book is managing the brain states, and then the skills that come along with making sure your partner's in the right brain state. They're making sure you're in the right brain state, and why certain types of listening work for the brain, why certain types of speaking work for the brain. So, that's the premise of it, is to really kind of help that own internal dialogue and perception as well.
And as you detailed there for a moment, the distinction, as compared to, say, therapy, is you're really not digging into past blockages and childhood events and all that kind of stuff. You're shifting brain state, and that can actually be fairly challenging. I know from personal experience, I know from talking to people here on the show, people often will kind of face up to, okay, I got to change my brain state, and then they have trouble doing that. It's one of the reasons that people go into therapy in the first place. So I'm kind of curious to know, in your experience and what you teach in the book, have you found methods that help people get past that kind of high levels of resistance?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm going to answer what you stated kind of in twofold. First, I call myself a coach specifically because I help people strategize. Physical therapy is if somebody has an injury, kind of like couples therapy. There might be dysfunction or something difficult in the relationship or something from childhood. So as a coach, I help people strategize. There may not be an injury. There may not be conflict in the relationship, that we're going to take it and improve upon it. The second answer to your question is, stress is a very physical thing, right? So when we are in conflict with our partner or we're triggered by our partner, a very physical thing happens to our body. Our body releases hormones. We move into that sympathetic nervous arousal state. And so oftentimes I think we're looking for solutions as a way of like shifting your mindset. Well, when you are in a triggered brain state, your brain is not thinking clearly. You are defensive, emotional, and reactive. If you were thinking clearly and you were in the brain state that allowed you to strategize, then of course you could come up with solutions to regulate your mindset. But because you're in this other brain state, and these two brain states work inversely from one another, we actually have to address that triggered state in a physical way. It's a physical issue that we should address in a physical way. So doing physical things like shaking, breathing, very active things, has our body then become the remote control for the brain. So the best way to shift mindset is to use your body versus your mind.
Interesting.
Very interesting, because that's not typically what we hear. So tell us a little more about that.
Yeah. So if you think about it, we go into the fight and flight response. And us humans don't typically complete the fight and flight response, right? If we are in conflict internally, we may want to fight. We may want to smack somebody, or we may want to shake them. Well, we don't do that because that's not socially acceptable. Instead, we stuff it. Or we want to do the flight response. Forget it. I'm quitting my job. I'm leaving this relationship. I'm moving to Jamaica. We can't do that either, because that also isn't very socially responsible. So we stuff that as well. And we end up in this limbo that we haven't done a fight or flight, and it just builds and builds and builds. But if we use the physical response, we can actually complete the cycle. So let's take one of the tools, shaking, for example. Full on shaking your body can actually dissipate the hormones, or burn them up, use them up, that we have in the limbic response, the fight and flight response. Do any of you have dogs?
Yes.
Yes.
Cat, not dogs. Sorry.
A cat. Okay. Well, a dog, I'm sure you've seen a dog that shakes when you take it to the vet or when there's thunder.
Mm-hmm.
That's the dog's response to stress. Its body is using up the hormones that have been released, just as if it were fighting, right, to complete the response. So that's what we can do as humans, is to actually use the same response that any mammal would have, to use up those hormones. And then when, this is why exercise feels really good. But to do that, to get shifted into a different mindset.
Is that actually effective enough to rid yourself of that undesired mindset?
Yeah, well, everything's temporary. Well, I would love to say that poof, everything's gone and we could always be in the perfect mindset. But yes, it is massively effective. I've been teaching physical response to limbic mindset for years. And years and years and years later, people say, I'm still shaking. It's one of the most powerful tools. Breathing, specifically having a really long, slow exhale, can shift your nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
So having a long, slow, extended exhale tells the brain, hey, there's no danger right now. Because your brain is not able to distinguish a thought, a worry, a frustration from actual imminent danger. So when your partner and you are in conflict, when you're upset at work, maybe you're having a situation that you can't pay the bills this month, your brain is actually perceiving imminent danger when really it's just a thought or a situation that probably isn't going to result in death, but the brain doesn't know the difference. So having a long, slow exhale actually helps us move into a parasympathetic nervous state and switches into a more conscious mindset, into more of a prefrontal state to allow us to think clearly, problem solve, and have solutions.
Yeah, I can see that with a fear-based state. Of course, not all of our negative reactions are directly fear. I mean, we could make the argument they're all fear-based, but they're not directly fear-based. For instance, frustration is not something we typically associate with fear.
Right.
We tend to think of it as something that's coming from within, like, I'm so frustrated by this thing.
Yeah.
Whatever this thing is.
Well, I'd love to say that our brain is smart enough to distinguish fear from frustration, but all it's recognizing is the chemical. Mm-hmm. Right? So frustration, releasing adrenaline. Fear, you're releasing adrenaline. So the brain really isn't smart enough to just have those distinctions of, oh, it's just frustration. Don't worry about it. No, the brain goes, oh crap, there's danger. It's just recognizing it as danger.
So you're saying that these various physical tricks, so to speak, actually do work with other kinds of responses, fear and anger and rage and all that kind of thing.
100%. Yeah. And you know what is interesting is that I think as a society, we do a lot of things to sort of calm our nervous systems, right? People are doing yoga. People are doing meditation. Mm-hmm. We get anxious, we get worked up, and everybody's like, oh, just calm down your system. But I promise you, doing very physical things, and it's my go-to. I love to go to the gym and pound on a bag. I put a punching bag in my kid's bedroom because when he goes into this fight and flight response, he is a fight response kind of kid. Like, he gets agitated and he's not going to sit and meditate. He needs to punch something. So it's really healthy to express anger. I just don't think that we're, as a society, really embracing that as much as we should. I know they have the rage rooms where you can break stuff, but having a really physical outlet, I think, is incredibly helpful for a lot of people.
Does it matter what kind of physical outlet it is within socially acceptable parameters? Well,
parameters, right? I mean, yeah, don't hurt anybody. But if you have a bag and you want to express some anger, go for it. I mean, I think that's, each person has to determine on their own what works for them,
I guess I was thinking you can hit a bag, you can go for a run, you can, climb a tree, you can go dancing. There are lots of different kinds of activities you can do. Do they all work, or is it certain activities, or does it matter?
Well, I think it's, dependent on the person. Some people, going for a walk is really helpful. They're clearing their mind. Other people, they really have to make physical contact with something. I mean, I think it's just a personal experiment. Some people, yoga and meditation is the right approach. And I think situationally too, some things may get you so heated that going for a walk or meditating is never going to be enough, that really having a physical outlet will be great for you. But I think there's a beautiful discovery for each individual person to see what works. I mean, would you guys say that you each have a preference for when you're finding yourself stressed or finding overwhelmed? Do you have a go-to tool that works for you?
Sugar, sadly. No.
Oh, you need to come back. We need to fix that.
Somebody needs a tune-up.
It's funny, like, some of those things, Lisa, that you taught me in that brain health course, I still use, like the shake it out. We do that with the kids. We're like, let's just shake it out, and we all get that out of our system. For me, I find the breathing works better. That calms me down better because I know I can just do it there and then wherever I am. And I think you said counting as well. I use that with the kids when they're just literally, they can't focus and they're just losing. I'm like, let's count things, and we use the counting. Just switching that brain side.
Yeah. Remind me how old your kids are now.
So they're 7 and 10 now.
Oh my gosh, it's been a while since they were little.
They were little, yeah.
But and I love what you're saying, because all of these tools are amazing for children, especially the physical ones. Their prefrontal states are not fully myelinated, meaning that they don't have quick direct access to them until they're 25 years old. So children are quick to have reactive, big, bold reactions to things, and having outlets that allow them to regulate themselves is hands down, in my opinion, the best thing that we can ever give our children is their own regulation tools. Because if they're taking a test, or they're in school and they're really worked up and they don't know how to manage their own physical state, it presents in a lot of different ways. But if they can start regulating themselves, I know a ton of adults that don't know how to regulate themselves. It took me a long time to figure out how to regulate my own self. And if we can start teaching this to our kids, and Anne-Marie, you're so right. This is what I teach adults to share with their children too, how to shake, how to breathe, how to do these things so that they have these tools. Yeah.
I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, I'm kind of like playing back in my mind times that I have, felt the need to release something and gone out to take a walk or done something physical. And there are times when I've done that. One thing that I'm realizing happens a lot to me, I imagine it happens with other people too, is when I do something physical, it alleviates, but it doesn't necessarily eliminate. Mm-hmm. And I think the reason it doesn't eliminate is that even if I get myself calmed down, my brain wants to keep coming in with, yeah, but this, yeah, but that, yeah, but this, but that, it's like carrying on the argument, so to speak.
Well, would you like for me to explain why that happens?
Sure.
Okay. So in a stress response, anything that's triggering you, our body releases cortisol. Mm-hmm. Well, in a real threat situation, cortisol serves an amazing purpose. So if the burglar breaks into your home and you're hiding under the bed, cortisol is going to do two things. Number one, it's going to have you have a heightened sensory experience. You're going to hear every footstep. You're going to see every movement because it's trying to keep you safe and having you hypersensory. The second thing it does is it has you lock in on the danger so that your mind isn't wandering off and then you end up having serious injury. So it's going to lock in on whatever the danger is. Where's the burglar? How do I get out of the house? What's my escape route? Who do I call? And it's going to have you continually lock into the danger. Well, because the brain cannot distinguish danger from a thought. So maybe you had an argument with your spouse or you're worried about money. The brain perceives it as danger. So you're going to lock in on it. You're going to hyper focus on it to keep yourself safe. And then we do all sorts of crazy things, like we have these what are called cognitive distortions. We start to catastrophize and imagine worst case possible scenario. Again, those things are to keep you safe. Your brain is trying to predict every potential worst possible outcome so that you're prepared, so that you do stay safe. So there are a lot of tools to interrupt these patterns and to unhook from them. It's just your brain gets really wrapped around the axle. Does that make sense?
It's beginning to sound to me like the Couples Playbook, your recently released book, isn't just for couples.
It's not just for couples. I would love to do a version for parents and for the workplace. I mean, it is a tool that can really, in any relationship, honestly, and even with your own relationship with yourself, it can be incredibly helpful. I just happen to use it for couples because it's easy to speak in that way. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It can be applied anywhere.
So what are some of the other things we can do? I mean, we got we got out, we did some sort of, physical thing. We got the tension down a significant amount. It isn't quite gone yet. And that cortisol is just kicking in and it's saying, well, yeah, the danger's still there. We got to do something. What do you do?
Well, there's so many. Gosh, I wish we had hours and hours and hours. I'd love to. Marie, I was going to ask, do you remember any of the tools from the class that actually work for you when you get stuck in the cycle? If not, that's okay. I can share some of them, but I was just wondering if anything really works.
No, I don't off the top of my head. I just use the breathing thing.
Breathing's great. Do you remember the distraction tool? Do you guys, Alex, you're nodding. Do you ever distract your brain because it's starting to go into the pattern?
All the time.
Yeah. Well, tell me what you use, and because I love to hear other people's tools.
TV, for sure, hands down.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, TV. It can really unhook. So one of the distractions, so when our brain is going into this futuristic thinking, the black and white thinking, the filtering, the catastrophizing, the part of our brain is just trying to problem solve. The problem with that is when we're problem solving, it keeps us in that fight and flight response. Oh my gosh, if I don't pay my bills, I'm going to lose my house. If I lose my house, I'm going to end up living in a box under the bridge, right? We have the craziest stories. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty good at creating some big imaginary stories. So if we give the brain something else to do, a different problem to solve that has zero consequence. So if I'm imagining living in a box under a bridge, there's going to be fear or worry. And I'm going to keep myself in that limbic loop, that fight and flight response. I'm going to release more adrenaline and cortisol. I'm going to continue to worry about the future. And when I worry about the future, the brain doesn't know the difference if I'm actually in that scenario or if I'm worried about it, can't tell the difference. So I get stuck. So we want to interrupt it. And we can give our brain all sorts of things to do to problem solve. The one that I like to use is giving a category and a constraint. So thinking of all of the animals that begin with the letter B. And so I start to think about that. Bear, beaver, you guys can jump in. You don't want me to name them all. But really what that does is allows the brain to solve a different problem. And it downregulates that stress response, that fight and flight response, because now there's no worry about how many animals you name. And then you can keep doing that to keep your brain out of that, what I call a tantruming type of brain state, because that's all it's doing is throwing a big tantrum in the moment, trying to keep you safe, but it's not very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Alex, while I was asking my question, you looked like you were poised to say something. Was there something on your tongue?
This whole thing is very interesting to me because as an autistic person, we tend to already have these regulations in our bodies and brains. So like if something becomes super stressful to me, my body automatically will start to stim. It'll start to have outlets of physical things for my body to do to take my mind off of it or to change my brainwave patterns. So it's interesting to hear it from your guys' side where you're like, oh, I have to go do this. I have to, and I'm seeing it in my husband's eyes too, because he gets mad and he's like, I got to go for a drive. And I'm like, oh, okay. Me, I just sit here and I'm just going to self-soothe and then I'm over it.
Oh, that's awesome. What do you do? What naturally shows up for you in self-soothing?
I like to, can you see my knee? I like to do this.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. And that seems to unhook you from whatever is worrying you, and it seems to work really quickly.
I mean, it takes a few minutes. Like I'll sit there in my head and I'll do the catastrophizing or whatever, and then I'll just start self-soothing, and then I move on to something else.
Good for you. We all need that ability because most of us get stuck for a really long time. Hours, days, weeks. I don't know about you guys, but I can sure have a big catastrophe party in my brain for a long time.
Yep.
But then it's like when you don't experience it, you get frustrated with other people who do. So like my husband goes through it and he's like, he'll go to 10, the worst case scenario. And I'm like, bro, we're at 1. Like, yet. Like, let's start at 1. Let's just fix 1. We don't even have to go to 10. Like, just calm down. And it's just frustrating for me to people to be like, just stressing themselves out about the stress they're already experiencing.
Gosh, we all need a little of your mojo because. Well, do you find yourself getting stuck in the loop?
Oh yeah,
sometimes.
Yeah. Huh.
And I think that's really what my questions were driving at too, because it's easy to be stuck in that loop. It can be really hard to climb out of it. And so I'm really curious about the whole physical activity approach, just because I found it to be, somewhat effective. I'm just not sure if I found it to be wholly effective. Maybe that's just, I haven't found the right ones. I don't know.
What have you tried? What are ones that you've tried that just don't seem to work for you?
I can't say that they don't work. They all work partially. They work to a degree. Yeah. Meditation has worked. Walking has worked. Almost any kind of getting outside and doing something physical has worked, and all work to a degree. The longer that I engage in them, the more effective they are. I have trouble though remembering if there are any particular cases where it alleviated the whole cycle completely. I'm not saying that it didn't happen. I just don't remember that it happened.
Yeah. When you may need to do a combination. Sometimes that happens too, is that you have to get the real physicalness of it and then distract your brain at the same time. I usually do that. Typically the go-to is shake your body, breathe, do some of the breathing techniques, specifically holding a really long, slow exhale, and then doing the brain distraction. And a combination of the three tend to really help. And there's tons and tons of different tools out there. And some of them work really well in certain situations and some of them not, right? So it may just be trying on a few different ones to deal with it. And I would love for it to say, poof, everything goes away.
Yeah.
We have worries and concerns. If that was the case, I would be a billionaire because I have a solution. But just have some great tools, I think, that really can help. And might need to find some more that really play into both of those things.
Again, I'm having trouble picking out specific scenes, specific events that occurred and saying, well, this is how it played out. But the general feeling that I'm getting inside is that even on those occasions where I'm able to calm it and just, get the cycle at least broken, the cycle will come back unless I'm really vigilant.
Yeah, welcome to being human.
Yeah, right.
Me too. I do this stuff for a living, Walt, and I struggle with it. So I'd love to say there's this perfect, easy solution. But yeah, it will come back because your brain is like, oh my gosh, that's dangerous. Even if it's just you didn't pay the bill, right? And so it's just going to have a perception of it. And it really is a practice. It's really having it rear up and handling and having it come up. It's breaking the cycle of it instead of it letting it last for hours and days and however long. We could all be like Alex. That would be amazing.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Wave our magic wand. Yeah.
Which is very cool.
I do think just having that understanding though of how your brain is working when you're in that moment can help always to calms me down as well. Because I'm just like, this is just a reaction. This is just me in that fight or flight. This is what's happening. So I'm less attacky when I think about what's actually going on in my body and in my brain.
This is so great, Anne-Marie, because this is the whole purpose of the couples playbook for relationships, because it's really, really, really hard for me personally to know when I'm in that limbic response, when I'm in the fight and flight response. I'm reactive. I'm not thinking clearly. I'm not like, I'm in that space where I'm being snippy and passive aggressive. No, I am fully in it. But if my partner can recognize it and my partner knows, oh my gosh, this is the answers to the test for Lisa. Lisa really likes a physical outlet. So he sees me in the limbic response and he goes, hey, let's go for a quick run. And I'm like, I don't want to. And we go for a run and he knows how to help down regulate my response and vice versa. I can see his. Now, the hard part is a lot of times our fight and flight response is contagious. So if I am in that, snippy limbic state, and then it triggers him. And then we have this great limbic loop where we're like back and forth. So one of us has to be the adult in the room somehow, right? Or we have rules. There's part of the playbook is to have rules around this that we've game planned beforehand of, hey, if we're both in this state, what are the rules? Hey, we're going to throw a flag on the field, right? Because it's a sports analogy. We throw a flag on the field. We take a 20-minute timeout. We go do our thing. And then we come back and then we can have a conversation. But it really is about that co-regulation piece. Just like you said, Anne-Marie, it's hard to know we're in it. But if we have a partner that's got our best interest and we're both setting each other up to win, it's so awesome to have that. And you as a parent, You know, you and your husband can help your kids can help you. It's just such a great conversation as a family to have as well.
I agree.
What I'm thinking about as I'm sitting here kind of sitting with it and listening to what you're saying is the physical approach is really ideal as a short-term calmer. And I'm suspecting that if you can combine that with longer-term processes, methods, things to do that basically give you the ability to control what kind of things you're focusing on, and you know, are you in a higher vibe appreciative mode, or are you in a lower vibe blaming and shaming and all that kind of stuff mode? I get the feeling that if you put those two things together, that actually gives you an ongoing strategy to deal with almost anything that comes your way.
Absolutely. Well, what I'd say is us humans love to make up stories. And our stories aren't usually accurate, but if we weren't storytellers, we would be robots. You know, our day would be really boring. It would be, you know, hey, Lisa, what was your day? I woke up, I went to the gym, I did a spreadsheet, I ate lunch, and snooze fest. So what we do as humans is we invent stories to really elaborate on our lives. And oftentimes it's inaccurate. So if I have a belief that I did poorly at my job today, and that my boss is angry at me, and then my brain goes into, oh my gosh, well, you're going to get fired, and then he's going to call everybody in the industry, and nobody's ever going to hire you again, or whatever my brain is doing, it's simply creating a story. And if I don't have the tools to recognize that that is just a story and not reality, I'm going to start believing it. My brain's going to think there's danger, and we get into this whole world of issue that really isn't real. It's some fictional thing that I've created. Mm-hmm. That's not accurate. So having great tools to interrupt that, just like you said, combining the physical with the interruption of like whatever story we're creating can also be really, really helpful. And it changes our belief system and our mindset. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can see exactly how that works. Also, the way you were just describing that right now, it brought to mind a concept we talk about a lot here on the show, the concept of contrast or polarity, that we live in a world of polarity, of contrast, and that we are actually creating this contrast and this polarity. Mm-hmm. That's literally what you're talking about when you're talking about the limbic cycle. That's how we do it right there.
Yeah, it gives us a human experience, and it's not always a pleasant one, but we can also get addicted to the adrenaline and the fear, and, you know, so we do it. Unfortunately, we're not real conscious about it.
So it raises another interesting question that I've brought up on the show in different contexts. And now I'm thinking about it in this context. And that is, do we do this deliberately? I mean, do we intentionally come here? We've often talked about this here on the show. You know, we came into this world to experience the polarity and contrast. Mm-hmm. And now I'm wondering, do we? I'm not so sure.
Well, I don't want to be the one that answers the question, ladies. Do you want to? I don't want to be in the hot seat on that one. I sure have an opinion, but
I just got here 39 years ago. I'll let you know when I find out.
Yeah.
That's the best answer. What she said.
What she said. Yeah. I think everybody's going to defer on this one. But it is really at the root of a lot of this, I think, because I think it's kind of like the starting point for deciding who owns this thing. Mm. We do, everybody's very aware now, particularly in these days and these years, we're very aware of the ability that people have to essentially give their power away, to blame others, to point fingers, to do all that kind of stuff. And in the context of what we're talking about here, that's just another extension of this friggin' limbic cycle. I mean, gee willikers.
Totally. Well, what you're saying, it's so interesting because it all resides in the subconscious mind, right? All of our triggers are there. So if something happened to us in childhood where it felt, you know, we saw our parents fighting and you know, we never want to experience that again. So we adopt being a peacekeeper as a personality trait. We want
to attack me
or people pleasers, right? Because ultimately it feels unsafe to the brain. That felt dangerous. So our subconscious mind is always on duty to make sure that we're safe. Now, us eating sugar, for somehow in the brain, our brain perceives somewhere in the subconscious that it's keeping us safe. So that's how hypnotherapy works, is we're changing that subconscious pattern, that it's not really sugar that's keeping us safe. It makes you feel good for a moment. But so like all of these belief systems, from the time we're born to when we're 7 years old, the brainwave pattern we have is a hypnotic state. So we are absorbing everything in the first 7 years of life, and it's creating these associations subconsciously. And then these become our belief systems as adults, that I'm not lovable, I'm not good enough, I'm too sensitive, or, we can go to the entire list of fun things that we have as belief systems. And it really does come from that subconscious programming.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay. So Lisa, have you heard of ketamine therapy?
Yes.
How is it different? And if you could explain both, how is it different from what you do?
Well, there's a substance involved with ketamine therapy.
Obviously, yeah.
I'm not an expert in it, so I don't want to speak to it as if I actually know. But what I would say is that, ketamine does get you out of the really conscious, thinky brain state. I don't know if it actually works on your brainwave patterns and gets you into a different. Are you familiar with it enough to speak to if it changes your brain?
I know that the ketamine itself doesn't do that, but the therapist that you're working with helps the medication help you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I have seen so many amazing results with it, and I don't want to be an advocate for it or not, because it's just, I'm not a clinician, so I have to be careful about that. But I really have seen a lot of really cool benefits that people have had from the therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And so getting back to the question of similarity, you say that you see some similarities?
Are you asking me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't see why not. I mean, I think when people are in an altered state, right, there is a medicine, there is a chemical, a substance that's helping people get out of their own way, their own belief system. I do believe it's rewiring neural pathways. It's probably desensitizing. There's lots of therapies out there that desensitize our triggers. Brain spotting is one that I use. And so I believe the ketamine, and again, I wish I was more of an expert on it to speak about it, but I do think it helps unhook some of those triggered pathways so that they don't continue as a trigger in your life. And people can talk about the trauma or the issue or whatever they've had without it actually feeling like they're reliving it.
Mm-hmm. And how does that differ from what you do?
Oh, well, I don't know enough about ketamine to actually be able to compare it, but because I just don't use substance
right.
to alter things. With brain spotting, are you guys familiar with brain spotting as a modality?
No.
Are you familiar with EMDR?
I know of it.
Yeah. So EMDR uses an eye movement to help, change brainwave pattern and desensitize PTSD, anxiety, depression. Mm-hmm. Brain spotting is similar, but you're holding your eyes in one particular position. And when you do that, it actually accesses the subcortical part of your brain, which allows there to be a process of emotions and memories that can come up and out and clear. Brain spotting, if you guys ever have the opportunity to try it, or if you guys ever want to try it with me, it is a phenomenal, extraordinary modality that can really help release old stuff that you don't even have to be consciously aware of that's processing.
What's involved in it? What exactly is brain spotting? If you're describing the activity.
Mm-hmm. So what it looks like physically is that, you're going to have headphones on. The headphones are going to have a bilateral sound. So the sound will go from your right ear to your left ear. The purpose of the bilateral sound is to change your brainwave patterns, not dissimilar to what we do in hypnosis. I'm just changing your brainwave patterns, but I'm doing it verbally. The sound does it just through music, right? What that does is take us from a beta brainwave pattern, which we're all in right now. We're talking, we're having a conversation, and it moves you into a theta brainwave pattern or potentially a low theta brainwave pattern. When we're in a theta brainwave, we stop overthinking. We stop worrying about the future or remembering the past, and allows us to access into the subconscious mind. So that's what the sound does. The eye position is what allows there to access anything emotional or anything physical in your body. So, for example, if you notice as I'm talking, if you were to ask me my favorite movie, you might notice that my eyes go up to the right, right to the left, or wherever. Every time somebody talks, you notice their eyes go everywhere. It's our eye position that allows us to access the hippocampus and other areas of our brain to recall memories. I'm sure you all know that emotions are stored in our bodies, and they can be. There's lots of books in science about the body keeps the score is one of the most famous ones. And so when we hold an eye position, we can actually allow whatever's there to come up and process it so that it doesn't stay in our bodies. We don't usually have a lot of tools to get there, right? Because it is a subconscious process. So what it looks like is you have the headphones on. I would hold a stick on my end so that you have a pointer. My client would look at the stick. We'd find the brain spot. Either I would find it based on their body movements, their blinking, their breath, their swallowing, lots of different reactions that I can tell in their body that they're in a brain spot, or the client will know because they'll have either a sensation in their body. They might have a pain. They might have twitching. They might feel their heart rate. They might feel heat, and we'll hold the brain spot. And then we process together. So I may ask questions. There may be long periods of silence. There might be body movement, but it's just allowing that to process, to have those emotions come up and clear.
So it's in my way of expressing it, it sounds like it's a way of desensitizing based on a location in the brain.
Yes. That's a beautiful way of putting it. Mm-hmm.
That's really interesting.
It is really interesting.
I know nothing about brain spotting up until this point in time, so now I'm really curious about it.
I was today years old.
You all should just sign up. We'll have you all do a brain spotting session. It's super interesting, and you'll notice it's not this big. And probably Anne-Marie, you probably noticed this in hypnotherapy, is that you don't just show up the next day and be like, I don't want sugar anymore. It's like that's all thing. Like you just don't want to eat the bread, or you just find yourself not doing it. Brain spotting's the same way. You don't notice this big stark contrast, but typically people just feel a little bit lighter. They'll feel less bothered and less agitated by things. If something that is a continual trigger in your life, perhaps something that was a trauma in your life that previously, if it was talked about, you'd find yourself in an emotional state. It sort of just doesn't get you as much. It doesn't trigger you as much. So when we're talking about the couples work, I love when I'm working with couples, I love to do one-on-one sessions with them because those belief systems, those things that always trigger them, I love to help support clear those so they're less sensitive about them. Mm-hmm. Not that people are sensitive, but they desensitize from those triggers so that when they come back as a couple, those things don't quite trigger them as much, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It does make sense. Yeah. And it's a very different approach from the therapeutic approach, which is about going into whatever the issue is and finding its root and so forth. It's simply, where is it in the brain? Let's desensitize the brain.
Mm-hmm. And that's so spot on. And, I am a huge fan of therapy and counseling, and I've done years and years and years of work on myself. So there's nothing wrong with that. But if we look at the brain doesn't know the difference between a thought and reality. So if we're constantly going back and digging up the graveyard and digging up the bones, the brain, oftentimes we can re-traumatize and really be in that if we're not finding the ways to desensitize. So it is helpful and important, in my opinion, to also have the tools to unhook, to recreate new neural pathways, prune away the old ones that were very triggering, and create new neural pathways that, you can talk about the situation and issue without the big trauma. And I know that's where ketamine comes in, because that was your question, is that helps unhook some of those big traumatic events so that they're not so big and traumatic anymore.
Right.
It actually sounds to me like the two could work in conjunction. Like if you have one really particularly difficult thing that's just been haunting you for decades and you just can't seem to shake yourself of it. You've been going through the therapy helps some, but doesn't quite get there. And you've tried doing something more physical, and that kind of doesn't quite get you there, but then you do both together. I imagine now all of a sudden it's like, hitting it with gamma rays or something.
Yes. Yes, for sure. And this is why I do a whole holistic approach with any of my clients, whether it's one-on-one or with my couples, because there are lots of different ways to approach it. Of course, I don't do the ketamine, but it, an interesting addition onto the all of it.
Yeah. Very, very fascinating. I'm kind of amazed. At least I've been doing this program since 2012. I don't remember the exact number, but this is like episode 1906 or something like that. So there's like a huge number of episodes. I don't think we've ever gone into this before. And I'm sitting here kind of in shock about that, to be perfectly honest.
Well, hopefully a good shock. You're not like...
It is. Well, it's not traumatic. I'm not in fight or flight mode. It's not like I'm throwing the headphones down and having to go take a run. So that's good. But it's a surprise shock. Like, wow, how did we miss this? Because we've talked a lot about the physical side that has certainly come up in conversation. We've talked about the psychological side. We've talked about therapeutic side. We've talked about various techniques for redirecting our attention and so forth. I don't think we've ever actually directly talked about this limbic cycle. That's really interesting. How did we miss that, Alex? I mean, seriously, I don't know.
Trying to watch it. That's what I know.
Yeah, it's just wow. It's mind bending. Really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why I do the work that I do, because I know it's incredibly, like, I had the same aha moment, like, how did I miss this,
Yeah.
And so I keep studying it and learning it and going, okay, now what's next? So if this doesn't work, where is the missing piece here? And so, yeah, it's always a discovery, but yeah, I have the same aha.
Well, there's another aha that happens every time we do a show, and that's about 4 minutes before the end of the show where we realize that the hour is up. Like, well, wait a minute, I could do like another hour's worth of questions here. This is not fair.
I know, right?
As usual, right? Isn't that the way it is, Anne-Marie? I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
But, this has been really fascinating. It's been a fabulous conversation, and thank you for coming on to share it with us. Tell people again about the book and where they can find it, and tell people about, for somebody who wanted to reach out and learn more about your coaching services, how do they find you?
Absolutely. So I actually have a copy of the book here so you can see it. So it's on Amazon, The Couples Playbook. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to get it on the screen there. You can find me at lmarini.com. That's my website, lmarini.com. You can also click on there to see all of my services, one-on-one coaching, couples coaching. I do a lot of speaking engagements. It's a lot of fun to come and teach corporate organizations about the brain and how to communicate better and how to be a better team. So I love doing corporate work as well. And so also on the website, you can get a link into the couples work and the book and all of that. The link on Amazon is there.
Really good. And one thing that I love to do, and I've really been looking forward to do it in this case, is almost everybody who comes onto the show is a giver in some way. They're out giving to the public, trying to help make things better. And as a result, you end up, people like you end up coming onto this podcast. You go onto other podcasts, you write books, you write blog pieces, you're doing all this stuff, putting stuff out there for people. And there are people who absorb it. You never meet them, you never see them, but you're helping them in ways that you never find out about. And I think it's important to recognize that. So on behalf of those people you've never met and that you've never seen, thank you for what you've been doing and what you're continuing to do, because this is important stuff.
Yeah. And I love, if anybody can hop on my site and do free consultations if you have additional questions from the conversation today. And, it's always important for me, even if we aren't a fit to work together, in sessions, please, by all means, hop on, do a 30-minute free consult, chat with me. And thank you to all of you. This has just been an absolute joy and pleasure. I feel so honored to hang out with you today, for you guys to bring me on. So just thank you so much from the bottom of my heart.
Oh, it's been fun. Anne-Marie, thanks for bringing Lisa to us. I mean, you're the one who made this happen, Anne-Marie, so thank you for that.
I just knew she'd be amazing, and she didn't disappoint.
Not at all. Oh, my goodness. Alex, you get the last word here. If you had to pick one thing that came out of this that is resonating with you more than anything else, what would it be?
It's all your brain's fault.
Love it.
Oh, that's funny. That's really good. All right. Well, thank you, Lisa Marini, so much. We appreciate you being here. And Anne-Marie, thanks for joining us on Thursday. And Alex, thanks for continuing to get healthy. I love that. That's really, really great.
Love to see it.
Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.